Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host of All About You. This program is taped live every week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. This show is designed to give my guests a chance to give their life story. This morning I have a very special guest, the Attorney General of the state of Connecticut, Attorney General George Jepsen. Good morning, Attorney General Jepsen. How you doing?
Great to be here.
All right. Could you kind of let people know pretty much where did your life got started at?
Well, I was actually not from Connecticut originally. I was born in Mississippi, which is where my mom is from. My parents were kind of classical Depression era, World War II generation. They both grew up extremely poor. My mom in rural Mississippi, my father in rural eastern Washington state. They met right after the war. My mom was working as a social worker in the Everglades with migrant workers, and my dad had been a B-17 pilot during the war, and he was stationed in Homestead, Florida. They met and eventually got married. My father got scholarships to study in Europe, and so they were actually married in Europe. And when they came back to the States with a toddler, my brother, and I was born in Mississippi, and then my dad got a job in Connecticut, and so when I was a little boy, they moved to Greenwich, back when you could afford to move into Greenwich with no money, just one person on a salary, and three babies, and buy a cape for $20,000. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in a very Republican town, Greenwich. I'm a Democrat, of course. Yes. And I got it being growing up in the 60s and early 70s. There was so much going on, whether it was the war in Vietnam, the civil rights movement, the environmental movement, consumer protection was in its infancy, women's issues. And so I became, although my parents weren't directly involved in politics, I became very interested in public issues as a boy. And I was active in volunteering in campaigns when I was in middle school and high school. And so when I got into college and law school, I started taking off time to work in political campaigns, and moved to Stanford when I got out of law school and in 1983, mm-hmm. and became active in Stanford politics. At that time, I met another young, politically ambitious lawyer who was my age, named Dan Malloy, who was, of course, today the governor. Yes. And I got elected to the State House of Representatives in 1986, and was actually working with now Governor Malloy in a very small law firm in Stanford when he decided to run for mayor in 1995, so I helped him run for mayor. So that's how I got active in politics, because of issues that I cared deeply about, and was very fortunate to get elected to the State House of Representatives in 1986. In 1990, I was elected to the State Senate. I served in the State Senate for 12 years, the last 6 of which I was the Senate Majority Leader. And then I was the unsuccessful Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor in 2002. So I was out of politics out of electoral politics for a period of time, although I did chair the Democratic Party on a statewide basis for 2 years. And then I got my opportunity to run for Attorney General in 2010 when Dick Blumenthal, after 20 years on the job, ran for U.S. Senate, and I was fortunate to get elected, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Okay, well, let's get back to how you grew up at. Did you enjoy growing up in Mississippi? Because you say you was raised in Greenwich?
I was just a little toddler when we moved, so I have very little, no recollection of my life in Mississippi. But I'm a very, very fortunate person. I get up in the morning and feel just very lucky. I grew up in a loving family, and my parents encouraged me to follow my dreams and to do what I wanted to do with my life. And so that meant, you conventionally come out of law school, you may go out and try to make a lot of money. No, I wanted to be active in public service.
Mm-hmm. Now, what have made you decide to stay committed to Connecticut? I mean, you say you was raised in Greenwich, Connecticut. You moved to Stamford, Connecticut in 1983. Do you have a love for the state of Connecticut and Stamford?
Yes, Connecticut's a great small state. It's a beautiful state. We're one of the most, believe it or not, we're one of the most forested states in the country, and Connecticut has allowed me to pursue my passion of public service, and so I really like it here. I get up in the morning, and whether I was a state senator introducing bills that I think affected in a positive way the quality of life in Connecticut, or serving as state attorney general, where I make decisions every day that are helpful to people. I am so grateful that Connecticut has given me the opportunity to follow my dreams.
Now, you actually work in the capital city here in Hartford, but you still live in Stamford, which is about an hour and 15-minute commute. Is that an issue to you?
Well, I made that commute for 16 years as a state legislator, and my wife grew up in West Hartford. She's Cuban. She was born in Cuba, came to America as a child, a refugee from Castro's Cuba. She came here not speaking a word of English, and they started out in East Hartford, then moved to West Hartford. So she's from West Hartford, and when I became Attorney General, we moved to West Hartford, and so I live just about. I've made it from my house to my office in 6 minutes.
Okay.
Usually it's 8 or 10 or 12, depending on traffic. But we love living in Greater Hartford, and we have 2 boys who are. Christian, who is 20 and he's a junior in college, and Will is 17 and he's a senior at Hall High School in West Hartford. But we love living up here.
Okay. So you still, you lived in Stamford, Connecticut for many years. Now you moved to West Hartford, Connecticut, and you love Connecticut as a whole state.
Yeah, it's an incredible state. One of the great things about Connecticut is that in its very small, compact borders, you have beautiful rivers and lakes. You have Long Island Sound. You have rural areas. You have forested areas, and you have terrific suburbs and some very vibrant cities. We need to invest more in our cities. That's the one place where we need to do a better job. That's for sure. But taken as a whole, it's a terrific state. You can have a big league job in a city, whether it's Stamford or New Haven or Hartford or Bridgeport, and if you want to stay in the city, it can be a vibrant place to live in a downtown, or you can choose, as I have, to commute 10 minutes to a wonderful suburb. And if you want a longer commute, you can either live on the water or on a lake, and if you drive even further, half hour, 40 minutes, which is not that long a time to commute. You can live out on a farm with 10 or 15 acres. So the quality of life is what sells Connecticut, and I'm very proud of our state.
So you will continue to be a resident in the state of Connecticut. You don't see yourself ever going anywhere else in this country?
I would be hard for me to be a resident of any place except Connecticut, and I feel myself to be an extremely fortunate individual to have had the opportunities that I've had, and to most people when they get up in the morning go to work, or a lot of people when they get up in the morning and go to work, if they're lucky enough to have a job, it's a job that is not fulfilling. I feel fulfilled every day, and for that I consider myself extremely fortunate. Okay.
Now you mentioned to me that you got elected the same year that our current Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman was elected. Was that a?
Yeah, in 1986, I was 31 years old, and it was in 1984 there had been the Reagan Republican landslide. So sometimes after one side gets a big win, it bounces back to the other side. And 1986 was that kind of year. It was a good year for the Democrats. And Nancy Wyman was elected to the State House of Representatives, as was a young man named Joe Courtney, who's currently the congressman from the 2nd Congressional District, which is out in eastern Connecticut, kind of the eastern half of the state bordering Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Long Island Sound. And I was elected to the State House of Representatives. And so that was a great year for Democrats, and some of us have gone on to other things.
Now, have you built a long-lasting relationship with our current Lieutenant Governor, Nancy Wyman?
Nancy and I get along great. She's a terrific person, an utterly committed public servant, and I just adore her. And I see her frequently, several times a week. Yesterday, for example, I was at a political breakfast with her in the morning, and then I met with her and Governor Malloy later in the afternoon to discuss some issues.
Now, you also mentioned that you was in Stamford at the same time that Governor Dan Malloy was a resident in Stamford.
Yeah.
Did the two of you ever interact?
Yeah, we got along. We got along great. We were both the same age. I guess we were 28 or 29 when we both. He moved back to Stamford. He grew up in Stamford. I moved into Stamford. We both were the same year. He ran for Board of Finance that year. A couple of years later, I ran for State House of Representatives. I helped him run for the Board of Finance. He helped me run for State Representative and later for State Senator. And we were in the same small law firm, as I think I mentioned, when he ran for mayor. What's a great story about Dan is that he played competitive rugby up until he was close to 40 years old. And on Monday mornings in that law firm, he would come in, with his face all mangled up and bruised and his ear twisted or something like that, because rugby can be a tough sport. And when he wanted to run for mayor, his wife said, you can play rugby or you can run for mayor, but you can't do both.
Can't do both.
Fortunately for the state of Connecticut, he chose to run for mayor. But he's been a personal friend and a political ally for 30 years. And he inherited an extremely difficult situation here in Connecticut, the worst fiscal crisis of any state in the country, the worst fiscal crisis in Connecticut's history. And you don't turn 20 years of decline around in just 3 or 4 years, but he's done an incredible job in moving the state in the right direction, whether it's investing in our cities, investing in infrastructure, education. There's job creation. We've created more than 40,000 private sector jobs in the last 3 years. He's bringing new businesses in, businesses that have are businesses of the future, not declining industries, but things that are going to grow with Connecticut. So I wish him well.
Okay. Now, what's this like to have the mindset to be an elected official position here in Connecticut, and then to be able to make the transition to become an appointed position as the Attorney General? What's the mindset that you have to have?
I'm Attorney General was elected. I was elected in 2010, the same year as Dick Blumenthal was elected to the U.S. Senate. And there are a number of states where the position is appointed.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. In New Jersey, for example, it's appointed. In New Hampshire, it's appointed. In Tennessee, the Supreme Court actually appoints the Attorney General. In Maine, the state legislature names the Attorney General. So there are a lot of ways to become Attorney General. In Connecticut, it happens to be an elected position. And so I received the Democratic nomination in 2010 and was fortunate to be elected.
Do you feel like there's any difference between being elected and being appointed for this position?
Yeah, there is a very significant difference, and you're right, exactly right to ask that question. If you're attorneys general who are appointed generally serve at the will of the governor. So in effect, you're a cabinet officer for the governor, and you're there to do the governor's bidding. I, as an independently elected Attorney General, I have a separate and distinct mandate from Governor Malloy. Fortunately, Governor Malloy and I have similar values and see eye to eye on issues 99% of the time, and so there's not been conflict. But for example, if there was a Republican governor who didn't want to pursue certain law enforcement actions that I thought were appropriate, then there might be some conflict. But as an independently elected official, I make the final decision as to how to enforce the laws in the state of Connecticut.
Now, is Governor Dan Malloy your boss? I mean, do you work for the governor, or do you work with him, or what's the relationship that you have as a governor?
I'm completely independent.
Okay.
And I don't work for him as I would if I was appointed by him. I have my own independent mandate, but I think that it serves the public best. In effect, the executive branch of government, which is embodied by the office of governor, but includes all of his different departments, I'm their lawyer.
Okay.
If the Commissioner of Environmental Protection wants to take a polluter to court, they come to me. If the Commissioner of Consumer Protection wants to take a business that's cheating people to court, my office does it. And it serves the interests of the people of Connecticut when my office works well with the executive branch of government. So we try to bend over backwards to work on a cooperative basis with the governor and his staff and his departments.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much going to have to be your last words for this particular show. I had enjoyed having you on here to give your life story. I think you have a very important position, and I think it is good to inform and educate people about the role, and not just the role, but also your life too, because I think that's very important, that many times people know a little bit about the person behind a particular position that they holds. Again, this is Jonathan Small. I had enjoyed doing this show this morning with the Attorney General for the state of Connecticut. This program, again, could be broadcast live every single week, pretty much on accesstv.org. Our network is the main source to watch this show. Again, this is Jonathan Small, host of All About You. Thank you.